Chairperson, Councilmember Jan Perry. This is the Ad Hoc Committee on Downtown Stadium and Convention Center Renovation. It's a special meeting, and I apologize for my late arrival. And we are in room 1010. We have one item that we're going to discuss today. So, Mr. CLA, if you'd read the item into the record.
Presentation by AG concerning the environmental impact report for the event center and new hall with a focus on transportation, traffic, and circulation issues.
All right. Who's here to present?
Good morning, Honorable Council Members. Bill Delvac of Armbruster, Goldsmith & Delvac on behalf of AEG. I'm joined today by Mike Bates of the Mobility Group. Mike and I have worked together going back to Staples Center, LA Live, and now this Convention Center modernization project. Mike has been one of the leading transportation engineers, and he'll be making a presentation about the main topic. But I thought I would start off briefly about the EIR and how this fits into that context. And then at the closing, I'm prepared to give you some thoughts about SB 292 and how that will impact the process going forward.
Okay.
So with that, except for the fact that Mike...
Your presenter just walked away.
Okay, here's the filler. So with regard to the EIR, it has been clear to us and in discussions with planning that transportation is probably the key issue, and it affects parking, pedestrian circulation, traffic. And Mike has been involved in leading probably the most comprehensive traffic study in Los Angeles, if not the state of California, and you'll see some of the issues about that. We are scheduled to release a draft EIR in January, and the goal is to begin city hearings on the entitlements in May, in an effort to continue on schedule for 2016 season. The EIR preparation is well underway. Again, transportation is the key issue, and that's probably the most complicated, so it will be resolved toward the end. So what Mike is prepared to discuss this morning is the methodology of the transportation study and where we're going from here, but we don't have results yet, and they'll be coming in throughout this next process before the EIR is released.
Okay. Keep going. I heard you say keep going. You can do some 292 excerpts.
I'd be happy to speak to SB 292, and I have some handouts about it, which I'll turn in.
That's funny. Just for the record, Mr. Labange is present with Mr. Reyes, and I know Mr. Rosendahl is on his way because I saw him in the garage. Thank you. Okay.
This morning we already have an example of why I try never to use PowerPoint, in part because I don't do well with technology. As the committee knows, the state legislature on September 9th passed SB 292, authored by your former colleague and former President of the City Council, Alex Padilla, but with the ongoing leadership and focus from Speaker John Perez. And we were pleased to have the participation in those discussions with the NRDC and CLCV, and worked out, I believe, a number of important features. There are really 5 important things that the bill does in terms of the city process and protecting the environment. And as part of those 5 things, what the city and the AEG is not an exemption, not an absence of judicial review, but simply expediting judicial review on a time frame that candidly I believe the city and the state legislature should try to expect of every project. Within 175 days of the filing of the notice of determination after the council grants the approvals necessary to build the project, there must be a hearing and a resolution and decision in the Court of Appeal. That particular dispute resolution, I think, was the most important factor probably to all parties, and while we had hoped for a faster expedited process, we believe this is a good model, and in fact the state legislature is already emulating it with AB 900. In exchange for the expedited review, there are 5 very important things that the bill does, 2 of which are to protect the environment in very creative ways, and then 3 process points that we believe will substantially enhance the ongoing transparency of the process we've tried to undertake, and allow for meaningful public participation. The two environmental measures, which really were viewed by the environmental legislators and interest groups, are intended to go to the heart of the issue on transportation. The first is what's become called the best in the NFL, which we are to have the lowest trip ratio, passenger automobiles to spectators, of any stadium in the NFL, and in fact we are to beat
Okay,
that.
Mr. Rosenthal's here now. Okay, we're good.
Should I rewind?
No, it's good, he's good.
Good morning, Councilmember. I'm presenting a brief discussion of SB 292 and was in the part of the discussion.
You're okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I was in the part of the discussion regarding best in the NFL.
We know, yeah.
We are to be better than the next best stadium in the NFL on trip ratio by 10%, or we can only be 90% of the others. That's a very high standard, but it goes to the heart of the issues about transportation and resulting air quality if trips are reduced. We're in a great position, as you'll see from Mr. Bates' presentation, to rely on transit, and we do believe this will be a transit-oriented project. And so while we believe this is a very high requirement, we're determined to do our very best job to make that requirement.
Let me ask a question. If the PowerPoint isn't coming together, you can talk us through it, so.
Right.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, don't stress out about it.
I understand. No,
This
we're
is
not.
not-
We're just.
and this isn't the
it was
last time we're
working-
ever gonna discuss
It was working
these.
beautifully 10 minutes ago,
That's
so
all right.
we'll give it one shot, and then I can.
Yeah,
I'll
okay,
walk through.
yeah. That'll be the
Thank you.
last time we
Thank
discuss
you.
this.
Right.
So we believe we're in a strong position to have a transit-oriented project. The city has a role in the best in the NFL standard, which is starting after the second year of operations, we will be submitting an annual report to the city as to the results of the transportation measures and what the other stadia are doing in terms of their trip ratios. After the fifth season, if the city determines that the project is not the best in the NFL, according to the requirements, the city is directed by the legislation to impose additional feasible mitigation measures. This is extraordinary and unique. I'm unaware of any other situation that by statute a project is subjected to further mitigation or potential mitigation. And we believe that it was an important part of the balance, and we're prepared to meet that challenge. So the city will have an ongoing role in the best in the nation. The second thing, which is also related to
On that point, what indicators or monitoring measures are being contemplated to establish that point of view, and/or what triggers that 5-year oversight?
Yep. It's an excellent question. What the legislation calls for is for the city to adopt, at the time of the certification of an EIR, a protocol for measuring best in the nation, to measure our trips. Candidly, there's a lot of data and survey and issues that go into that on a technical basis, and Mr. Bates and AEG have started the discussion with the Department of Transportation as to what that study protocol should look like. So prior to the certification of the EIR, the City Council will be asked to review how the study will be done. The legislation understandably couldn't get into all the details of the technical matters, and frankly, we and the state legislators understood that this is really more a matter for the city to work out than the state legislature. So there will be total answers to your questions. They'll just be coming forth as part of the process. The other measure is carbon neutrality. And again, this is primarily based on concerns for the number of vehicle miles traveled and the air quality impacts. And what the bill requires is that the project be carbon neutral from the outset with regard to passenger trips for spectator events to the stadium. There are 3 ways in which that is to be carried out in the following order. First is by project-specific mitigation measures. Of course, trip reduction helps in that regard, critical in that regard, but other measures may be possible. Second is we're to look for local projects, beneficial projects that could increase air quality, reduce carbon, and there are some ways of doing that, and we're beginning to explore that, and we actually will look to our colleagues and friends in the environmental community to give us their thoughts on those. And the third and final one is, in the event that those 2 first measures don't work, that we would purchase offset credits. There's a growing market of these offset credits, but the goal of the legislation is not to have offset credits by rainforest land in South America, although that is proven to affect greenhouse gas, but to do things within the air quality management district basis. So we're prepared to meet these goals. Yes, Mr. LeBlanc.
The chair called,
Pardon me?
continue.
Okay,
I just have
we
a
need to make it quick, because we got to get into this presentation and schedule, but go ahead.
What are you doing about the Pico Street station? Are you going to enlarge the station for the Expo line, Blue line?
Yep.
What's happening on the freeway system around there? And is there any plan to have reverse lanes on Olympic Boulevard, and how far west would you go?
Yep.
And the other thing too is how many people go to the game on the trolley in San Diego? Because I think like 30,000 sometimes take that trolley. But get all those facts for us. Talk, you got a minute to answer.
Yeah, well, I'm going to allow Mr. Bates to answer those questions, which are, well, it's part of his presentation on, if the PowerPoint works. I want to very quickly touch on 3 process things that we believe are important for public participation. First is immediately after the release of the draft EIR, and this has never been required before, is that the city and the environmental impact report team shall hold an informational briefing session with the public so that in plain language we can explain the hundreds or even thousands of pages of technical information so that the public is better informed. The second thing is during the course, just prior to the close of the comment period, the city will hold a hearing to accept testimony on the draft EIR. Usually testimony isn't until the very end of the process. We anticipate in our discussions with planning that that would be a hearing officer hearing to accumulate the testimony and then present it in the final EIR. The third is, and we believe this is a very important provision, is that for 30 days after the close of the comment period, any party who requests it will be asked to participate in mediation that includes the city and AEG. The goal of this is before the final EIR is released, before the City Council considers the conditions of approval, that in a conducive format for understanding issues, that we in the city and the concerned parties may work out measures that could be incorporated to the project.
Olympic Boulevard, freeway system, reverse lane, transit, San Diego. Just add those two. Thank you.
Okay, so how are we doing on the PowerPoint?
We are junking the PowerPoint. I have a little handout.
That's fine.
That'll walk you through it.
That's fine. And then speak loudly so everybody can hear you. Mr. Pettit is here. I want you to know, Mr. Pettit, that you made a very interesting comment in the newspaper about coming to the stadium and how much you would enjoy it in a certain state of being. And I took it to heart. And no, but you know what? You raised an interesting issue about coming from the west side, and you highlight something that I hadn't thought about before, which is to be able to enjoy yourselves and not drive, and still be safe. And that's something that I actually talked about when I met with the traffic experts. Is it really struck me as a way to have people enjoy themselves and to be safe, and not have people on the road who've enjoyed themselves. So, why don't you talk us through this? And we do have 2 speaker cards. So, we'll go with you first.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning. And again, I apologize for the lack of the PowerPoint. For some reason, it was working beautifully before we started. But I did give you a handout which has a copy of each of the slides. So I will quickly walk you through these. Really, what we wanted to do this morning was focus on the process and approach we're taking to analyzing transportation and the study and some of the issues that are coming up. We don't have all the answers or all the results right now, but we're well into the process. So I'll take you through the approach. It is a very comprehensive transportation study. It's not just traffic. We're looking at traffic in terms of both roadway intersections and the freeways, but we're also looking closely at transit, at the parking situation, and at pedestrian analysis. And as part particularly of the surface traffic and the parking situation, we're also looking at adjacent neighborhoods to the project site. In terms of the process, on the next page, we are, as Bill said, in the middle of preparing the transportation study for the EIR. That will be the first document that really comes out on this. There will also be a detailed transportation management plan The detailed plan will not be in the EIR, as there's an awful lot of detail to work out prior to operations, but we do expect an outline of that to be in the EIR and to discuss the types of things that we would expect to appear in the transportation management plan. But that will certainly be prepared prior to opening day in close cooperation with all the transportation agencies. We've been working very closely with LADOT in this process, under their direction on both the methodology and the approach. And we've also received considerable input from the community and from public participation meetings, which we expect to continue over the next few months also. Turning the page, just to give you an idea of the broad analytical coverage that we have in the study, we're examining close to 180 intersections on the surface street system, close to 45 freeway ramps in and out of the downtown area, mainline freeway locations, as well as congestion management analysis. On the transit side, we'll be addressing the red and purple subway lines, the blue and Expo light rail lines, Metrolink into Union Station, as well as the bus system. So the map on the following page just gives you a kind of contextual overview of all the transportation facilities serving this site. Excellently supported by transit. One of the main comments we get in the community meetings is people are excited about the proximity to transit and the ability to use transit to get to the event center. You can also see there's, I think, 7 major freeway corridors that serve the downtown area, and there are ramps along all of those freeway corridors that serve the kind of greater downtown and the parking supply. Speaking of, on the next page, there are clearly a wide range of event scenarios that could occur at this facility. In conjunction with DOT and considering the different types of events, the largest crowds, what the traffic is likely to be, or the background traffic on the system, we have selected 3 main event scenarios to analyze in the EIR as, if you will, the kind of worst case scenarios. A Sunday daytime game that starts at 1 p.m., a Saturday daytime game that starts at 1 p.m., and a weekday evening event, probably an NFL game, Monday night or Thursday night football that starts at 5:30. Clearly the most frequent occurrences will be on Sunday, rather less so, but still on Saturday, and the weekday evening would occur a handful of times during the year. But these are the 3 key highest attendance, highest background traffic scenarios that we've identified. We will be addressing both what we call the pre-event hour, the hour before the start of the game, or the event, and the post-event hour. So we understand how people move into the facility and how they move out of the facility. Quite often these studies don't look at people leaving, but we'll be looking at both directions. We will also address what happens if there are concurrent events at the Coliseum and Dodger Stadium, as well as what happens if there is a concurrent auto show event.
Rose Bowl too, they never get to pass.
And
Hope you include that.
Yep. Next page, in terms of focus on transit, these are the mode splits that we have identified for analysis in the EIR. We actually think they're conservative. We think, as Bill mentioned, these will be exceeded, but we wanted to be conservative in our analysis for the EIR. So on a weekend, we think 15% at least will use transit. We think 3.5% will walk in from the downtown area, from people staying in hotels or people living in downtown. Weekday, we expect a slightly higher transit usage because of the higher background traffic levels, and a higher walk percentage because people are working in downtown and there's a much higher employment base in downtown during the weekday. So these are, we think, conservative estimates that we would expect to go higher. You can see that our estimated parking demand is in the 19,500 space range with these mode splits. On the next page, we have identified what we call a primary parking area, which I'll show you, the map is on the following page. We have inventoried almost 46,000. Actually, we've inventoried over 50,000 spaces within a 15 to 20 minute walk of the project site. We have eliminated some of those as just not being suitable for event parking, or because they will be taken out of the supply in the future because of entitled lots. But over 70% of these spaces are in garage structures, so unlikely to change in the future. We also surveyed the occupancy of all those parking spaces for the event periods that we're analyzing, and you can see that there's anywhere from 38,000 spaces available on a Sunday to almost 26,000 available on a weeknight,
Do you
which
see this as a way for building owners or parking lot owners to make additional revenue that they weren't making?
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely, because the majority of parking will be off-site. So it will be, if you will, market parking rather than project parking. And city parking, obviously, yes. Right. So the next map shows what we call the parking zones. This starts to get into what we think will be a fundamental element of the transportation management plan, where we will identify these zones within a 15 to 20-minute walking distance, and through extensive informational programs, and through, we hope, targeted selling of parking passes and parking that could be bundled with purchases of tickets. We will encourage people to park in particular parking zones depending on which corridor they are approaching the downtown. We are strongly trying to discourage traffic driving past the stadium, either on surface streets or on freeways, and to discourage people arriving at the stadium and then starting to circulate around to try and find a parking space. We would like people, if I'm coming in from, say, the Inland Empire on the San Bernardino Freeway, we would like to target you to park in the parking zones in the northeast and walk. If we're coming in from the south, then we'll target you in parking zones in the south. And we expect an extensive informational program, just the way AEG does now with Staples and LA Live, as well as controlling that through ticket sales as well. So that really is the next page in terms of our distributed parking, which has been very successful for Staples and for LA Live. We are talking to LEDOT about coordinating with the Downtown Express Park program, where there may be apps that we could include in their Express Park program that would show people where garages are and the preferred routes to those garages. The next two pages give you an example of the routes that we would show to get to the parking zones, depending which corridor you're coming in on. These two pages show the I-10 from the San Bernardino Freeway, as well as on the south side, how the 5 and the 60 would feed into the 10, and how people could distribute to parking on, if you will, their side of the event center. The page after those diagrams gives you a sense of the transportation strategy that we're looking at and the potential mitigations. Clearly, it will be multimodal. I'll just quickly run down some of these bullet points. Encouraging use of transit and non-auto will be extremely important, even more so with SB 292. We're looking closely at improving the PICO station, which I have a diagram in a second. We're exploring Express Park and Ride and Charter Bus, which I think addresses the comment at the beginning of the session, where there would be Express Bus from remote park and ride facilities, so that people can actually talk and do stuff on the bus that they couldn't if they were driving, which is, pretty attractive concept, I think. To continue significant informational programs through all media sources, including smartphones and those type of media. Very interested in what we call ticket bundling. When you buy the ticket for the event, we would like to also have you buy a transit pass at the same time, so you're predisposed to using transit, or if not, then we would want to bundle the parking pass with that so that we can target the area in which you park. There will be improved pedestrian circulation in the area of the event center, and I have a graphic on that in a second. We will work with LEDOT. There may be localized intersection improvements that may be appropriate. Obviously, for an event center that does not occur day to day, but irregularly, the focus will be more on operational transportation management during events, maybe, than building significant infrastructure. We will be looking at those with LADOT. As I said, there'll be a multi-agency transportation management plan developed along the lines of the one that was done successfully for Staples and LA Live, but I think much more comprehensive, that will include transit and parking and pedestrians. There will be an event coordination plan with the different event facilities in the area, so that there's continued strong coordination. That was something that came out of the Staples plan and continues to operate today. Monthly coordination between LA Live, Staples, and the Convention Center in terms of knowing what's coming up on the schedule. So the event coordination plan will be important. And clearly we expect to have a neighborhood protection program also, which will need to be worked out with the community as we move forward. The next page just shows you a concept of what we have been looking at in conjunction with Metro on the Pico station, and that concept, having looked at a variety of things, we think the most effective would be to add a second platform at the station. As this diagram shows, I would use my pointer, but you can't do that. But I think you see in red there would be a second platform adjacent to the existing platform, significantly enhance both capacity at the station for trains, but also significantly enhance pedestrian access to the train platforms and being able to handle the pedestrian and transit loads that we would expect. The second diagram just shows the cross-section. We believe this is feasible. It would take one lane out of Flower Street, so Flower Street on that section will be reduced from 3 lanes to 2 lanes. The trade-off being you get much better transit access, and we feel that there would still be sufficient capacity in the street for that to work. Finally, I appreciate I'm going fast, but I'm trying to leave some time for questions. There will, as a part of this process, be a streetscape and pedestrian plan. Melendres Gale have been working on this and have done a lot of good work on how to improve both pedestrian access and the streetscape. The 5 areas that they are focusing on are on the next page with the different colored areas. So one of them is Gilbert Lindsay Plaza in front of the Convention Center and what will be a major entrance to the Event Center. That's in red. The second area is Chickern Court that goes all the way out to Figueroa. The third area is Pico Boulevard, which we're from Figueroa to LA Live Way, which because of the location of the new hall, the building will be above Pico Boulevard all the way out to LA Live Way. So there'll be a lot of thought put into the design of how that, what we're now calling Pico Passage, will work. Connections through to Pico Union on Pico and 11th. On the back of the Event Center, LA Live Way, to improve pedestrian facilities on the west side of the stadium. And then in gold, on the bottom of the diagram, the Pico station and access to it. So that's a pretty rapid run through what we're about so far. Great.
Well, let me give you a few comments, and then we'll go through the committee members. And I have 3 speaker cards. I wanted to know if you have if you're going to develop a mitigation plan during non-event times, and if not, would you put that on?
We would expect ultimately the mitigation plan and the transportation management plan to probably have a tiered approach.
Okay.
Just like we started with Staples. So there would be a plan, say, for a sold-out event. There may be a plan for a 50% attendance event.
Okay, so it'll be staggered.
We think it would be staggered, yeah.
All right. And then as far as multi-agency transportation coordination, there's 2 other categories I want you to look at, and that would be film shoots.
Film shoots, yeah.
And construction sites. I don't know if you want to look at the particular size or how many trucks might be there or something like that, but definitely film shoots.
Okay,
We
good point.
shoot regularly in the 2nd Street Tunnel, and downtown has a lot of film shoots.
Yeah.
With concurrent events on campus, and as you push out, I know we talked about this a little bit, pushing out as far south as possibly the sports arena, and Mr. Labonte, I think, mentioned the Rose Bowl. You talked a little bit about mitigation of intersections and mitigating them to a certain point, but does that approach include, would it be comprehensive enough to push us out far enough to other venues so that we are aware of and coordinating and directing traffic in such a way that we might even benefit other venues? And I don't know that that's your intention, but, if it all works in the region, then it's better for everybody.
I think we'll have to look at that. When I mention intersection improvements, I'm primarily thinking around this site. It may be changing lane configurations, like Councilman Labonte mentioned. We're not there yet, knowing exactly where and when. I think our thought at this point is that in terms of the concurrent events with the Dodgers and the Coliseum, there are certain intersections that will be common to, say, both facilities that may be best managed by transportation management and traffic control, or there may be some intersection improvements that could be done.
May I just very briefly speak to that? It is very clear under SB 292 and the standard of trip reduction that our primary focus has to be getting people out of their cars. That's not to say there won't need to be some intersection mitigations, but almost all of our effort will be about having people out of their cars. And so that's our primary focus on mitigation. We certainly will be doing that which we're required, but in terms of the extra efforts about trip reduction.
Well, in a strange way, what you're doing may actually help us do what we've never been able to afford to do, which is to coordinate the activities in and out of the downtown and downtown adjacent in all directions in a way that makes it flow. And as I said, my comment about Mr. Pettit was serious because, I'm working on the Expo line, and we're thinking very hard about the north-south connectors on the western portion of the city and how we get people way over on the west side to come south, get on the line, or have decent park and rides,
Yes.
with amenities there at the park and rides that are appealing and attractive, so that they'll actually come however they want to get their car, whatever, and enjoy themselves and coming in and out of downtown in a way that's relatively seamless.
Right.
So this mitigation it's far beyond just.
Right.
I think you said what do you have to mitigate an intersection to? What's the term? Mitigating an
Well,
F-level intersection down to a.
We have to mitigate to LADOT thresholds of significance, which are kind of a sliding scale.
Okay.
So.
And A is good, F is bad.
A is good, F is bad.
Right. Okay.
Just a couple of, if I could make a couple of comments in response to the councilman's
All right.
question.
Well, then why don't we go down the row, because I try to keep the meetings in order.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So why don't we start with Mr. Levon?
Well, I think I was going to go Mr. Reyes, because first I
All right. Well, then why don't we start with Mr. Reyes?
It pays to be at 8:30. Thank you. My initial reaction is I'm pretty disappointed. I'm disappointed in this report. I'm disappointed because of the fact that when you look at your scope and what shows up in your document here, it's as if 70,000 people don't exist on the other side of the freeway, 70,000 people per square mile. Now, when you look at, and let me be very specific, when you look at your parking zones map, for example, there are parking lots on the other side of the freeway, and they don't show up on this map. When you look at your concentric circles, they stop 2 blocks west of the freeway, as if parking does not exist or occur on that side of the freeway. So the message here is not a very good one, and not focusing on the impact on this side of the freeway.
May I speak to that,
Well,
Councilmember?
let me finish.
I'm sorry.
During our committee, we heard from the public. We heard from the public how their neighborhoods are impacted by overflow parking. During the Emmy Awards, we had limousines parking on the street in front of people's homes, in front of their apartments, blocking their driveways, as if no one lived there. During Laker games, during LA live events, when you have folks who have the ability to spend money the way they want, we had prostitution occurring on that side of the freeway, where limousines and vans and folks bringing in prostitutes would come in and actually meet with people, pick them up, and leave a lot of disgusting. Anyway, I won't go into detail there. But the fact is, this has to be much more thorough from my point of view. So, I'm hoping, and I know this is the first cut, I know this is the first presentation. I understand we're setting the parameters for this dialogue. But if we're going to be real about how we're going to mitigate, I think those factors have to be folded in. Please go ahead.
Councilmember Reyes, Bill Delvac, very much appreciate the concerns. In terms of what our thoughts were, we had assumed that the PICO union, and perhaps incorrectly, and as you know, we've been looking to work through your office to have a dialogue with representatives of the community. We had assumed that the members of the community would prefer not to have parking directed to their neighborhood. If that's not the case, and if there's a goal to direct parking to those neighborhoods, we would be pleased to consider that.
The assertion there is that you're making the point as if we don't want to see parking. I'm telling you that parking already exists there, and it should be understood.
Well, and that's the second point, which we look to work very closely with the community to develop as Mr. Bates said, a neighborhood protection plan. And the reason why that isn't before you yet is because we needed to understand the background traffic conditions. Some of the concerns you raised, candidly, are new to me, but such as prostitution. I was.
That was stated in the committee meeting.
I heard it there. And one of the key elements, and this is, when I say new to me, it hadn't been raised before the hearing. One of the key elements of the EIR is to come up with a security and safety plan in close coordination with LAPD. We've been on an ongoing dialogue basis with them. It's going to be one of the most comprehensive safety and security plans, and that would be exactly the sort of issue that should be addressed in that plan.
And therefore, to put this on the record is critical. To put this on the record is critical.
We agree.
To understand where these placements are going to be contemplated, what strategies you're building is significant, because that either complements or makes more complicated the security issue.
Our goal on all of those particular issues is to allow the city's experts, the first responders to these issues, the police department, work out what they would like to see us do. We've been in close coordination. We've had a good working relationship, but our goal is to listen to and implement LAPD's views on this.
What I'm trying to be, and this is not an argument, but I'm trying to get you to understand that you have 70,000 people per square mile on the other side of the freeway, that their eyes and ears are just as important as the ones that you are suggesting, and I agree with you there. But we cannot ignore, and I'm looking forward to see what process and mechanism you're going to put together that allows the community folks on the other side of the freeway, and quite frankly, the periphery of the whole facility, and how we fold in their thoughts and their concerns, because they have to live with this. We, as consultants, as professionals processing, we're going to do our job, we're going to leave. These folks live there, so we have to understand that 24-hour, 7-day-a-week impact.
We more than share the goal, and I think the council member knows and other council members know that we were quite pleased that the very highest support for the project throughout the city, the very highest support, was in the 1-mile radius surrounding the facility, including PICO Union, and we've heard from a number of people who believe that while there could be impacts, there are also benefits.
This is not about support or not support. This is about how we establish an environment that makes it safer, more inviting, that is an economic development engine for all groups throughout this area. This is not about that. The other point I wanted to make is, on your map where you have Convention Center modernization and Farmers Field Project, the EIR Transportation Study, we have areas A, B, C, D, and E. When you look at Area E, Alley Drive Way, one of the critical opportunities is the pathway under the freeway. extending over into the other side. That dark blue line, my impression is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the improvement and/or the mitigation within the dark blue line, which is Area E, I believe,
LA Lifeway?
right?
Yeah.
That your study in landscaping and other forms of improvement is going to stay within those lines, is that accurate?
This is a preliminary diagram, frankly, Councilman. The team that is looking at the pedestrian streetscape will be looking at the connections under the freeway to Pico Union.
Okay, we need to get beyond just looking, we need to understand the opportunity there. The way we extend under that tunnel, under the freeway and into the other side is critical. These are pathways, these are pedestrian experiences that can be more inviting for the person who doesn't make $200,000 a year, or whatever ticket levels, or whatever event levels are going to be towards the person who can hopefully enjoy this new facility. There'll be a range of opportunities there. That corridor, I think, is a very critical juncture in how we express that invitation.
If I may provide a very brief explanation, what you see is the diagram about the things that the project is known to be doing or needs to do, but we've understood all the way along that the streetscape into Pico Union is a critical issue, and we anticipate that either as one of the community benefits or some other mechanism, that streetscape analysis as to how to create a better pedestrian environment in a broader area will be a critical component. And I would just say that, we very much appreciate the concerns, but when we say we're looking at, what we mean is we're doing the hard work to fully understand it. A team has been well underway. One of the great advances in the design from when we first started looking at it, and Councilmember and others had expressed this concern, and we heard it, is to make the Pico Boulevard, the Pico Passage, something more than just the feeling of a long tunnel. And so the design, quite fortunately, as you will see when that comes before you, has evolved so that there's a more open feel as you approach it. There'll be activities within the passage area, including activities related to the convention center, which will enliven it. The Gail Melendres team, I will tell you, as urban designers, could not be more focused on the pedestrian ways, and so we believe that when you see the actual details, you will be impressed and pleased, and if you're not, we expect to hear from you and we'll make it better.
I appreciate that. When you look at, and I appreciate that hard work, because I think that's critical, how are you integrating the traffic mitigations from both Staples Center and LA Live into the current analysis?
I'm sorry, say again?
How are you integrating the previous studies to both Staples Center and LA Live into the current analysis?
Well, I think two ways. Firstly, we expect to build on those programs as we develop the detailed transportation management plan for the broader program. Secondly, we are carrying existing events in our traffic analysis at LA Live that would continue to function during any event here, as well as convention center events. So we are analyzing concurrent convention center events. Now, AEG has stated that during a sold-out event in the event center, they would not schedule an event in Staples Center at the same time. So there would never be those two concurrent events, and that is as much about parking and their parking for season ticket holders and premier seats. Now, it may occur at a different time of the day, so if there was a football game at 1, there may be a Staples Center game at 7:30, but there's a 2.5-3-hour window between the two. But there would not be concurrent events between those two. But we have included in our traffic analysis the traffic that's associated with LA Live and with the convention center. So we will build on those as we develop the mitigation program.
And that's that tiered approach you spoke to when you looked at those key timeframes when you spoke to the impact, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
The event scenarios. Just a couple more points, Madam Chair, and I'll be done. In terms of communicating the results of the analysis with local communities, how do you intend to communicate with the local communities given the results of this?
Well, if I may speak to that, as you know, AEG has been in an extensive ongoing process in discussing with the community. We've welcomed all voices. one of the key things about, as I mentioned, about SB 292 is the requirement to have an informational briefing workshop, so that rather than just plunking a multi-hundred or thousand-page document on someone's lap and then having them wonder what it means, we will invite the community to come and sit and meet with us and talk to professionals like Michael Bates and the City Planning Department, so they can really hear what the results are. And we believe that that will be a very important part of this public to be able to comment on, and then through mediation, ultimately address concerns they have.
So you want them to come to you?
Well, we've been going to them, and we will continue to be prepared to go to them. Martha Salcedo can
Is
speak to
that
that.
you work with Mr. Reyes, follow his advice on where to have a meeting, and do a participatory...
I'll turn to Martha.
Okay, wait, let me finish.
Salcedo.
A participatory experience with the community. We've done it many times on other large projects where people come and they break up in groups and they write their ideas down and then present it to the larger group, and then provides you with a very much a hands-on roadmap to people's ideas, how they see their blocks, their neighborhoods, and I think I understand where he's going, because with the Coliseum, when it was active, fully active with the football team, a lot of the people in the south of the Coliseum actually relied on the Coliseum to be able to make an income, if it wasn't parking or, well, selling things, but which we don't do anymore. But but let's just stick. Let's been corrected, but let's just stick with the parking question. It provided people with an opportunity to make money off of the satellite activity, which was the major, mother lode in the area. And
Ancillary is good.
Yeah, the ancillary, but let's just stick to parking, as I said. And so I would suggest that you do that, and nobody knows his district better than he does.
I just want to add one other comment.
Your name for the record?
My name is Martha Salcedo. I'm the Vice President of Community Affairs for Anschutz Entertainment Group. We are very aware that there's a very large residential community adjacent to the project site, and we work with them on a regular basis on a number of ongoing operational issues. So one of the things that we've done beyond the things that Bill has mentioned is have met with the Pico Union Neighborhood Council, and they've developed an ad hoc committee that will meet with us on an ongoing basis, much more frequently than sort of the meetings that Bill has described that are, required as part of this process. So we're using that as sort of the starting point to creating ongoing regular dialogue with the community. We welcome the opportunity to work with your office to establish a specific meeting in the local community within Pico Union to talk about the results of this analysis, which we feel is important to be able to start having the conversation then in terms of building out an actual neighborhood protection plan.
Thank you, Ms. Salcedo.
All right, so our next individual will be Bill Rosendahl.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Okay.
Morning.
Is there a gentleman here by the name of Chris Lambert? Chris Lambert, a Twitter man? Well, he emailed me a bunch of good questions that I want to also ask. And then, have we made copies of this yet for the public? Here they come. Public, put your hands up so you can get copies of this, so that everybody gets a copy to know what was presented to us. He's going to pass them around.
Can I ask one technical question? Can you name two teams that played yesterday in the NFL?
God.
I rest my case. I love you, Billy.
Wait a minute. I was in Manzanar with the Japanese Americans who were brutally interred there for 3 years, and I did not pay attention to anything else. That's where I was. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, I have a series of questions. Do we have city staff here to help me with what that action was on SB 292? I don't need a consultant from the developer to tell me how great it is. I need to know from my own city an analysis right now of SB 292. Please, come on up. And I'm going to throw out a series of questions. I don't want to waste anybody's time, but I want it on the record, and I want answers to these questions.
Hey, Mr. Clerk.
Okay? While the community is getting those, I'm going to read off the questions. It'll be on the tape. I'll give you this as a hard copy afterwards. Okay? Okay. SB 292 contains traffic mitigation requirements in the bill, but the city does retain the authority to impose additional requirements as necessary. Is that correct?
John Foreman, City Planning Department. Yes, that is correct.
Very good. I thought SB 292 was drafted with the intent of streamlining CEQA challenges, so I was a little surprised to see traffic mitigation in the bill. Could someone explain the intent of having those mitigation measures in the bill? Not you, I want him.
John Foreman, City Planning. The Planning Department and LADOT were not consulted as to why those were included in the bill, so we were surprised to see those as well.
Okay, I'd like an answer. You can deal with them afterwards and find out more about it for us. Who authored the specific traffic mitigation requirements in the bill?
John Foreman, City Planning, do not know the answer to that.
Was it the author of the bill, a traffic engineer, or a consultant?
John Foreman, City Planning Department, do not know the answer
You
to
get
that.
me those answers? Okay. 4, SB 292 requires that the stadium achieve a trip ratio that is no more than 90% of the trip ratio at any other stadium serving a team in the NFL league. Who decided what was the ideal target?
John Foreman, do not know the answer to
Will you
that.
get me that answer too? Okay.
Yes, sir.
NFL stadiums range in capacity from 50 to 80,000 patrons. It's conceivable that we could hit that 90% target, but that doesn't mean our transportation system can necessarily support all those people. We are Los Angeles. We are a unique city with a unique set of challenges. We could hit that target and still end up with the gridlocked streets. Shouldn't we be comparing this stadium within the context of our own transportation network rather than comparing apples and oranges with other stadiums?
John Foreman, City Planning Department, that is something we will be looking at through the EIR process with our partners in LADOT and with the MTA.
Appreciate that. Number 5, the Planning Department, as the lead agency, will be responsible for as the developing of the guidelines and the criteria that will be used to determine the trip ratio. Is that correct?
John Foreman, Planning Department, that is correct, with support from LADOT.
Do we have a draft of those guidelines yet?
John Foreman, no.
I do want to see those guidelines before it takes effect.
All right.
We're not going to vote today.
I know, just putting it on the record.
Okay.
Who will be responsible for collecting the data to determine if we hit that 90% ratio?
That's still to be determined as we go through the EIR process.
Thank you. If the city determines that the data collected is insufficient, can it require the collection of additional data?
My understanding is that, yes, we can.
Who would cover the cost of that additional data collection?
AEG would cover the cost of that.
What's the recourse for non-compliance? What if the stadium never achieved this 90% target ratio? And conversely, what if they do?
That is something that we'll be looking at through the mitigation measure with LADOT.
Beautiful. Have you had discussions with Metro about improving the Blue Line station at Pico? The capacity of that platform is obviously very limited.
The Planning Department, LADOT, and Metro have had meetings and discussions about improving that station. Yes, sir.
Great. What about the connection from the stadium from the station to the stadium? What are the plans for streetscape improvements to make them more inviting to pedestrians? Are there plans to widen sidewalks, install street lights, and plant trees, etc.?
Those plans are in development right now, but they're still being discussed.
Good. Are you incorporating bicycle parking into your planning? We need adequate, safe, well-lit bicycle parking so that not only patrons but employees of the stadium can be assured that their bikes will be there at the end of the game or their shift.
That's being actively discussed as part of the project.
Our bicycle network needs to connect to the stadium as well. We have recently approved a bicycle plan, and we need to ensure that our bike lanes connect to the stadium so that people feel safe and comfortable traveling by bicycles to the stadiums. Have we looked at our bicycle plan and proposed facilities in the area?
Yes, we have been doing that as we're looking at the project design.
Great. Now, just for the record, I want to put Chris Lambert's questions on that were just tweeted to us, and it goes like this. His first question is, some have to be on the table, but points to consider include. What is the existing parking inventory within walking distance of the site? typically 1/4 a mile, also within 1/2 of a mile.
It's in that proportion.
So you will get an answer for that one.
Yes.
Okay, the next question is, what are the major parking structures, lots, and existing inventory along adjacent to under 1/4 mile direct MTA routes? And while you're writing that down, the third one, which will be on the record, 3 miles of adjacent MTA routes within 3 miles available via metro or bus. I'll print this out for you too. Considering the above parking inventory, what is the ratio of fans per stall for cars? Is it 3 to 1? What does city or consultant advise as acceptable? How do these counts and ratios compare to the LA Coliseum, Rose Bowl, Dodger Stadium, NFL? Will the on-site ratios satisfy the needs of the expected expansion, considering loss of inventory under existing West Hall? What will the demand be for public safety officers, city, county, and state to manage events for traffic security parking? Who will pay for these services? Will it be shared? What ratio? How does this compare with past agreements in LA City, County, and State in NFL? What will be the extent of street closures during events? Consider reversible traffic lanes. What are the cost implements for that? What are the planned, budget, and approved roadway improvements within a selected area of the site prior to the end of 2012? What is the anticipated scope and cost of roadway improvements to accommodate eventual traffic plans? This is just a few questions, but we'll print it out for you. That came from Chris Lambert. He's a resident in CD 11 in Westchester. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Mr. Labange.
Thank you very much. Here's how it goes, everybody. If this is going to work, it's going to work. And what it's going to do is, when you talk about being green, what it's going to do is transform Southern Californians to use public transit. Because there's no open parking lot, there's no Dodger Stadium. Even the Coliseum Expo Complex has more flat space around that. So the concept basically, and I like what, I just asked you too, because you got a little accent. Where are you from originally?
Where am I from originally? Yeah. England originally, many years ago.
I got to ask, I was fair to Mr. Rosendahl. Have you seen a football game in America?
I'm sorry?
You seen an NFL game?
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, I'm a big fan. Yeah.
What name of team that played yesterday?
I'm sorry.
Okay, keep going.
I'm sorry, I missed it.
I got it. We'll get this. That's a good line. Anyway, here's the situation. On the situation that we have here, there's a great opportunity for jobs, for the convention center, for the dynamics of LA Live. Yesterday, I went to the triathlon just to see it. Anybody go in this room? It was tremendous. And the people who came to enjoy the city. That's what this is about. Why you have a civic center, why you have cultural buildings, why you have convention centers, why you have sports fields, was to enjoy the city. If this is going to work, it's because we want to make it work. And I think it's all very good questions everybody asked. On the 110 corridor, it's very important. Just last week, I think UCLA was playing midday, SC was playing late in the day, the Dodgers had a game, and the Hollywood Bowl had something. So there was something all the time. Madam Chair, this is what I want to ask. Is there a duty officer? No one's here from DOT. I'm disappointed that no one. Well, you should get up here. Don't be. Come up. Jaime, if you're listening, your man's here. He was here, but he was shy. Is there a duty officer today in the DOT who's in below City Hall? Who's at AdSac Center?
Who's there now?
Is somebody a chief engineer of AdSac? Edward Yu. So that's very important to have these people who know all the systems. In the 84 games, they developed the AdSac system created by LA DOT engineers, the loops, the flows, all that. But a duty officer has to be present. And I contest your 1 hour thing. They show up 3 hours, 4 hours before a game, and sometimes stay later. Okay? The 110 corridor is extremely important. There's also the 10 interchange, the Santa Monica Freeway. It's a 1965 freeway. It's bad right now. And I think what I would like to have, Madam Chair, the next time you come here is have Caltrans come. Tell us what's happening right now. Because there's work being done on the freeway right now. And will that have any residual event? Here's another question for you. And Mr. Reyes, I would just say this would be helpful. With the community organizations, go visit San Diego, rent a bus, invite the leadership down, Watch what San Diego does. San Diego has neighborhoods next to their stadium. There's a whole combination, and maybe go up to San Francisco, which has an impacted in that district, in that neighborhood, what they do. Show and see some of those ideas. Put a little team together of community people that could do that. Also, absolutely, Madam Chair, would not support any drinking on public transit. I'm sorry, Mr. West LA, you could, if that's your idea, you could watch it on TV, but whoever had that idea, no drinking on public transit. One of the problems we had in our past experiences, people drank, and sometimes people who drank aren't mature enough to enjoy the sporting events and get hostile or get tired. Either one. No drinking. Madam President, absolutely don't like the idea of drinking on public transit. Whoever had that idea in West LA, absolutely not for that.
Okay.
I told you the 3 hours effect on the neighborhood. Olympic Boulevard, and this predates you, A Street used to be coned off, Olympic used to be coned off. Look at these corridors as far as moving people, and here's the tough question for you. Either one of you ask the question. Okay? Name the one venue that has 15,000 seats or more, that has the most effective transit system, bus, to get people to and fro. 5 seconds. One.
Locally or in the nation?
No, here in Southern California. One.
Oh, in Southern California.
Wait. Now, Madam CAO, you talk in class. Okay, you won the prize back there. You get free tickets to next year's opening.
Okay, thank you.
Hollywood Bowl. I think, look at the Bowl transit plan.
And for the record, Mr. Labange does not have any tickets to give, so.
Thank you, Jan. You cover for me.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. All right, Mr. Rosendahl, one more question.
Yeah, just
Then we
one
gotta go
more
to speaker
question
card.
that was tweeted to me. I mean, we're living in a real world, folks, that's on time all the time. It's from the LA Street Blog, and it says, Bill Rosendahl, has the planning department had conversations with Metro Los Angeles about expanding Pico Station?
John Foreman, City Planning. Yes, we have.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. And we have 3 cards. I'm going to call everybody up at once. Mr. Ray, you want to ask them? Okay. Ann Williams, Mark Kekeson. Are you here? Come on up. And Joyce Dillard. Is Joyce still here? Come on up.
These glasses.
Okay, Ann, why don't you start?
Okay.
And just so the folks know, we won't be voting today. This is just a presentation.
Good morning. I'm Ann Williams with the Central City Association. CCA represents over 400 businesses employing over 350,000 people in Los Angeles, and with a special focus on the continuing revitalization of downtown LA. When AEG proposed building the Staples Center over a decade ago, we heard a lot of concern raised about how the venue would exacerbate the traffic downtown. And I can tell you, as someone who has worked and played downtown both before and after Staples Center opened, these concerns never materialized. Downtown is the center of the region and is the hub of our regional transportation system. It's at the confluence of 4 freeways, 20 freeway interchanges. It's served by nearly 40 bus routes, as well as the local Dash system. It's accessible by 3, soon to be 4, metro rail lines, and in just a few years, the Regional Connector Project will make using those lines even more convenient. Visitors from outside the area can arrive by Metrolink, Amtrak, and one day soon, even high-speed rail. It can truly be said that all roads lead to downtown, and that's why the stadium proposal works so well here. Just as important is downtown's experience with large-scale events. We can host a huge convention at the convention center, a Laker game, a full slate of programming at the music center, and 20,000 people attending Art Walk, and we hardly even notice it because downtown is already set up to move a massive amount of people. AEG has a proven track record as a reliable community partner, and we know they are committed to leveraging downtown's incredibly rich transit resources and improving linkages in order to provide the best experience, not just for visitors to Farmers Field, but for all of those who we welcome downtown. So the Central Cities Association is excited about the prospect of making Los Angeles a national model for what an urban NFL stadium can look and be like in the 21st century.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kekeson?
Okay, I just go by Mark.
Okay,
Okay,
Mark.
I have two comments. One is I appreciate AEG's and the council's desire to try and create a new model where people attend football games. I've attended a lot of football games, pro and in college. Collectively, we're talking about investing far over $1 billion on this experiment to try and go ahead and get to greatly reduce the number of car trips to this thing. When it doesn't work, there's over $1 billion out there invested. There'll be huge pressure on this body to go ahead and change the rules to say, well, we got to make it work now, okay? So be ready for that to happen 5-6 years from now when it doesn't happen in this 50%, because people don't go to NFL games to go to sit on a bus or whatever. They go to a picnic. They don't go ahead and do their tailgating in a parking structure. They don't do that. The second comment I have with respect to, I heard Mr. Lewicki speak a few months ago about the prospect of getting 2 NFL teams. And he said it was actually his desire to only have 1 NFL team, even though he noted that his contract with Farmers, I believe, is an extra $300 million bonus in signage rights if they get 2 NFL versus 1. So it's pretty hard to believe he only wants 1. Anyway, the biggest reason I understand the council was interested in the stadium is to go ahead and boost the capacity of the convention center to make it work. If you have 2 NFL teams, they each play 10 games a year. They can't play the same day. They each play 2 exhibition games. That means they start in early August. They play all the way September, all the way through Christmas. And you have to assume both teams make the playoffs. That means from early August to late January, that stadium is used virtually every Sunday. LA Auto Show runs before Thanksgiving. And you go ahead and talk to anybody who runs an exhibit. You guys are laughing because you don't care, okay?
You got to look here. Who's laughing? Who's laughing?
This guy, he's clapping.
He's not laughing.
Oh, I don't think he's laughing. He's a good city attorney.
Fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyway, talk to anybody who runs. The trucks have to show up on Sunday to go ahead and have an exhibit open on Monday morning. If you have a football game that's still being played at 4:30 in the afternoon and doesn't empty out till 7:30 or 9:30, the trucks can't get in, and they'll just run their conventions at another location.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, our final public speaker will be Joyce Dillard.
I'm going to piggyback on his first, but it wasn't my first point. When I sat at the LA Exhibition Authority meetings, it's like their capacity is at 70%. I don't care what's in your financial documents, have reached their capacity. You have to take that in consideration to the projections. And as I speak of these things, I want you to take in consideration what the taxpayer will pay for this. No one addresses the toilets. You read transit, you don't have toilets. You have them in Union Station, and that's it. You don't have them at Flower. You may have one outside of Pershing Square. Along the way, there's no amenities. It's very difficult to ride transit. You have to really plan ahead. I've been at meetings where people have brought up the sidewalks. It's not friendly to pedestrians, especially children. So how much are we going to have to pay in that? I brought up both sewage and water to SCAG, who in different meetings, who isn't caring about that in their sustainable community strategy. Caltrans needs to be addressed. They have an MS4 permit. You've got a lot of cars coming here. You've got TMDLs. You've got the MS4 for the city of LA being changed because the county isn't going to take responsibility. You're leaving out the My Figueroa, which needs to be here testifying. You're leaving out a plan that is not legislated, Think Bike, which plans to narrow streets, which Mr. Labange was there. You know, you've got the Kingdom of Netherlands involved, but very few people in the city of LA. When they're narrowing streets, when you have trucks, when you have buses, there's a lot of aspects of this that are going to cost. You have to think of Morbitus, because you get a flat anywhere near here, someone wants a payoff to protect you from the gangs. You're going to need public safety officers. I've had tourists come to me because it's not safe to ride on the transit. They were assured by the hotel it wasn't. In one case, this woman's child was harassed. Her response is, I'll never come back to LA again. That's very difficult to handle because there are a lot of good things about this. Please address LAUSD parking and El Monte parking. They have rented out their auditoriums on weekends. I was trying to figure out why. It's to rent out the parking, and El Monte did one of these sue me if you want.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, that marks the end of our public comment. The next ad hoc meeting is scheduled for October the 11th at 5 p.m. It will be held in City Hall. We are still looking for a room, and most likely City Planning will be presenting on the project entitlements and provide an overview of the draft environmental impact report. So with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.